Today marks the 33rd full day of the John Deere strike, and we are less than 48 hours away from when union members gather for a third vote. On Friday, Deere and Company and the United Auto Workers Union announced they had reached another agreement. The union saying it was essentially the second contract offer with minor modifications. Most of those changes revolve around a 5% increase to a cap on the company's quarterly bonus system, otherwise known as SIP. One labor expert says at this point in the strike, any offer changes have to be weighed with how much longer workers can afford to be on the picket lines.
Because in this race to see who's in more economic discomfort first, John Deere or individual families, I think we know the answer to that, right? It's tough for these folks. They're not used to not being able to make their bills, and now they're looking at a stack of bills and saying, I don't know which one of these bills I'm not going to pay this month.
The last contract vote just over 2 weeks ago was rejected by a slim majority, just 55% of union members. And here to talk about these latest developments in News 8 for News 8 is News 8's Shelby Kluver, and she's joining us live in the studio. And Shelby, this feels like it's been a really long strike. 33 days feels like a really long time. So hopefully we're going to see some resolution coming up soon.
Well, I mean, 33 days, long time, depending on who you ask, right? Some union members that I speak to say that they have pushed so hard on this that but some employees are tired. You know, it's cold on the picket lines, and for some families, relying on only $275 a week is getting harder and harder. All of that began after the previous contract expired back on October 1st. Just 10 days later, an overwhelming majority of members, roughly 90%, rejected the tentative agreement Deere and Company reached with the union. By that Thursday, the strike began, and it wasn't until just 2 weeks ago that a second offer was presented to the members. Now, as Jillian just said, that one was also rejected, but by a much closer margin, only 55% of members voting to accept it. And of course, that all brings us back to this upcoming Wednesday when workers will head back to their unions ready for a third vote. And when I speak with many local union workers, there's a real sense that this third vote, this ratification vote, will pass, although probably not overwhelmingly, which brings us to the changes that make up this new offer. Union leaders said this vote is essentially on the second deal with some minor tweaks. Really, the main one has to do with KIP, which is Deere's quarterly incentive program. So the idea here is that employees are able to earn quarterly bonuses based on how much extra they can do from whatever goals they have for whatever they need to achieve that week. Anything that's done over that goal can translate to more money that week, up to a certain cap. Right now, the cap is set at 15%. But under this new contract, that cap would be raised to 20%. Now, some people argue it's not exactly giving more money to workers, it's just shuffling around when you're paying them money that they're already owed.
Wow, there's so much that goes into all of these contract negotiations, and I know you've been following it very closely. You've stayed on top of it this whole time. So some say that this is really a very complicated contract, and what are you hearing from some of the labor members that you've been talking with?
Deere's KIP program is notoriously known as one of the most complicated in the industry. It's really hard to understand. There's a lot of different nuances with it, and there's a lot of fear that no matter what's picked up in this third offer, if it's accepted, Deere could potentially remove it later on down the road. So a lot of uncertainty there with KIP, even though that's the entire point of this third vote.
And what are you hearing from some of these union workers about this possible agreement? Is there enough here to sway that little extra bit into accepting this contract?
During the last contract vote, out of almost 10,000 union members, just over 9,000 members voted. So the majority was a very slim one, and it's thought that if only about 500 more workers voted in favor of the strike, guaranteeing everybody stays the same as they did last vote, I mean, this strike could be over by Wednesday. And so the overwhelming feeling is that it's going to pass because it's been a long 33 days. A lot of people can't survive on $275 strike paychecks anymore.
Absolutely, and we have the holidays coming up as well, so definitely a time that hopefully they're going to be able to reach an agreement that satisfies both sides.
And there is one important difference that's going to happen for this vote that wasn't apparent in the first or the second one. Waterloo, the largest faction, about 3,000 John Deere members, is actually going to have to vote in separate voting blocks based on their last name. So instead of being able to go to the polls whenever they want on Wednesday, Waterloo workers will have to look at when their last name is scheduled for a vote and then go to the union hall or wherever it is they're voting based on that. Now, union leaders there haven't said exactly why they've made that decision. However, some of the reasons that workers have kind of come up with to think of is 3,000 workers is a lot of people to vote, and it's really expensive to rent out a venue for that. So they're hoping that this can just streamline that process, and it's not meant to be seen as any way to make voting harder for these members.
Okay, anxious to see how that vote goes on Wednesday. Shelby, thank you again so much for covering this so closely, staying on top of this. We'll be sure to check in with you throughout the week and see how things go.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much, Shelby.